Part 174. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1736. So this new enemy's structure is completely different from the creatures in our world. Gretel curiously looked through the information brought back by his senior sister. Yes, things seized outside the world barrier are still not allowed to be brought back, including dragon blood and dragon meat, because there may be worm eggs, so it is best not to bring them back. Philby didn't want to cause trouble. So, she just brought back the information, all the pictures, all the experimental records. At this moment, let the little junior brother watch each one by one. Yeah, it's completely different. There aren't even cells. Philby flipped through the information helplessly. Little Greet, I'm so sorry. I promised to help you get the monster chromosomes before, but it seems I can't get them now. Oh, there's nothing to be sorry for. I should thank senior sister. Gretel stared at the images on the light screen, flipping through them one by one, and suddenly frowned. This structure, this layer by layer crystal structure, senior sister, have you ever measured their element types? That is, test what elements they belong to, what atoms are they made of. This is really not the case. The experimental equipment Philby brought up was not used for analysis in this area. It is not impossible to rub it by hand, but the efficiency is too low. She came down this time with the intention of discussing with Gretel, making an experiment plan, and then bringing some instruments up. One thing to say, there are several sets of instruments for measuring atomic sequences in the system of change. We have all come to Dragon Island. Seeing that there are so many new materials, no matter the atomic sequence or molecular structure, how can we study and utilize them? Rely on the experience of the magician, grab a few possibly useful materials, and try them one by one? That was before. Not now. Now that we have a theoretical foundation, we must decisively use theory to guide practice. I'll go back and ask them to borrow a set of instruments and use them. Philby made the arrangement as a matter of course. By the way, Greet, you suggested that I test the element types. Did you think of something? Oh, you are talking about those dragons. They have been fighting their opponents for such a long time. Why doesn't anyone test the element sequence? Actually, the teacher has been taking the test for a long time and has never tested it, Gretel silently cursed. Of course, if the teacher doesn't test this kind of thing, it's probably because his mind is not focused on it. The teacher was busy studying radioactive explosion spells day by day, and it was too late to adjust the spell configuration and enhance the power of the spell. Occasionally, when I have a little free time, I have to fight with that demigod and deduce applications related to wave-particle duality. I guess you really don't have time, right? Dragon Clan, they may have tested it, but haven't made it public, or maybe they haven't tested it. After all, the Dragon Clan is not like us. They don't have the habit of writing papers after completing research, and publishing them after writing them. Philby thought for a while, nodded, and then shook her head. Given the way those dragons have rough skin and thick flesh, they can carry themselves with their bodies as long as they can, and they often swallow and digest the opponent. Maybe they really don't care what atoms they swallow. As long as it is rich in energy, non-poisonous, or although poisonous but within the tolerance range, can be digested, and is good for itself, the dragons can eat whatever they dare. Then what did you think of? Or do you have any suggestions on where I should start? There are no suggestions. Gretel slowly shook his head. He only took a look at the picture. What suggestions can he make? Only this kind of layered crystallization method, and what the senior sister said, this kind of creature can flicker. During the flickering process, the black state and the white state, the states of different conductivity, how come he reminds him of the semiconductor in the previous life? If it is a semiconductor, then, either this organism is not a carbon-based organism itself, but a silicon-based organism or something similar to silicon-based organisms. Or, the part that the senior sister cut and dissected was not the part of the body of this creature that can grow, multiply, and be full of vitality at all. For example, after cutting for a long time, all that was cut was cuticles such as hair and nails. Without a test subject at hand, Gretel could only make a guess. Senior sister, on the other hand, is very interested in this kind of creature whose conductivity can change. Also, I also think that the situation of having a very small core and growing layer by layer with the core as the center is of great research value. You said, if our gems can grow like this. High temperature, high pressure, and several fireballs burst together to press graphite into diamonds and aluminum oxide mixed with impurities into rubies and sapphires. This method is indeed very good, but it is still very expensive. It requires at least an 8-ring energy evocation master. If you are unlucky, if you catch up with someone whose job is rougher or whose research direction is different, he may not be able to handle it even with 8 rings. The 9-ring mage personally rubs the gems. The movement, the energy consumption, although it is cheaper than natural gems, it is still very expensive. If I could grow quietly like this creature. Senior sister, don't tell me, it's really not impossible. Greet couldn't help but twitch his chin. It seems that in the past life, the method of manufacturing gems using high temperature and high pressure has become outdated. The latest method used is liquid deposition method or vapor deposition method. It is said that the gems created are big, pure, and beautiful, and they can be of any type and color you want. In terms of purity, it completely beats natural diamonds. And there is no movement, the energy consumption is not too high, just put it there quietly, it grows by itself, the cost is very low. Not only has it completely dominated the field of industrial gems, it has even forced manufacturers of jewelry gems, such as natural diamonds, to say, natural diamonds are only those with flaws. Natural diamonds are the most precious, produced by nature and unique. Artificial diamonds are industrial products, and they are available in as many quantities as you want. They are not worth cherishing. Look, look. When the level of artificial diamonds was low, it was promoted that artificial diamonds were not as smooth as natural diamonds and not as big as natural diamonds. Sure enough, natural diamonds are the most precious. Artificial diamonds surpass natural diamonds, and they are preaching that only those with flaws are valuable. Do all the truths and feelings in this world lie in your mouth? Pooh. Gretel didn't care whether the diamonds he used were man-made or natural. As long as the quantity is large enough and the quality is good enough to support his experimental needs, anything will do. Taking a step back, the diamonds that Cyrilla likes only need to be numerous, beautiful, and sparkling enough. If there is another condition, it is that the magic power contained in them is rich enough. Creatures like this that grow slowly, according to the senior sister, are strong enough to grow to level 15 or above, half legendary, or even to the level of demigod. Then, the magic power inside the gems grown by the same method must be rich enough. Senior sister, I think you can try to study how the life force of this creature comes from. Since there are brain waves in the brain, this kind of creature will be conductive and non-conductive for a while. Maybe the current stored between conductive and non-conductive is where its life and wisdom lie? Ahem, Gretel really doesn't know how silicon-based life lives and where their intelligence comes from. He has never even watched the movies, TV series, and animations in his previous life, and he has never played any games. There seems to be an animation or comic called Gem Man or something, and there are various life forms with gem bodies in it. However, the author may or may not have made assumptions about how they are composed and why there is life. In Gretel's previous life, he only heard the name of this anime from students and nurses, but never watched it at all. But silicon-based, semiconductor, inside a chip, inside a CD, inside a floppy disk, hard disk, USB flash drive, various storage devices, anyway, there should be things related to electricity. As long as it has something to do with electricity, it shouldn't escape the eyes of the senior sister, or, at least, the teacher. Greed tossed out the idea, and Philby gladly took it up as a direction to study. She quickly scanned around the mage tower, completed the work of using electric current to enhance the chromosomes, and then headed back to the meteorite base. And soon, she came up with the latest research results. Greet, I discovered it. The vitality of this enemy, or in other words, their brains, is hidden in the electric current that they can switch on and off. As long as you can control their conductive and non-conductive states, destroying them will be much easier than attacking them forcefully. Please give me a monthly ticket at the beginning of the month. Meow 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 meow. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1737. Oh, semiconductors. Gretel instantly thought of a lot of messy things. What Terminator, what the Matrix, what mechanical enemy. Oh, there's also humanoid computer Angel Heart and the like. Anyway, it feels like what they are facing is not the Zerg, but the Omnic crisis. In any case, it's always a good thing to have a general understanding of the enemy. Greet nodded happily. Ah, we have a direction, that's good. Senior sister, work harder and figure out how to switch their currents on and off, how to control them to conduct or not conduct electricity, and then you'll get twice the result with half the effort by beating them. I think so too. The corners of Philby Legend's lips curled up slightly. That's right, how to control it, we still need some time to experiment. We have to capture it alive. It's useless to kill it. It won't stimulate its reaction. He gritted his teeth again and said. It will also pretend to be dead. Pretend to be dead. Several times, I accidentally turned around and it just pounced on me. If my defense hadn't been strong enough, and outside the world barrier, I'd be covered in protective magic and various sequence magic at all times, and the small world would always be around me. I would have almost had my neck bitten off by it. Ah, it doesn't necessarily mean it's useless if it's dead. At least it can be tested for conductivity. Gretel shrugged. There were no intelligent creatures in the semiconductors of the previous life. Didn't they show the same results? Heat it, cool it down, shine it with various lights, throw a force field at it to apply pressure. He gave the same suggestions, recalling the various characteristics of semiconductors in previous lives. Also, gather all kinds of magic power to interfere with it and penetrate it. Give it a try. As long as there is an effective direction, you can at least kill it first, right? But this is so inefficient, Philby complained helplessly. I'm still thinking, since they use electric current to think, if I use stronger electric current, maybe I can control them and use them to fight back. Gretel opened his mouth, not knowing what to say. Senior sister, you are so brave. You are thinking too far. Semiconductors haven't figured it out yet. Have you already thought of directly erasing, rewriting, overwriting the program, and changing other people's core programs? Senior sister, you haven't learned computer programming yet. You don't know how to write a program at all. Speaking of which, there seems to be some difference between semiconductor programs and computer programs. Basic circuits, digital electronics, analog electronics, and 010101, C language, Java, C++, Python. It seems to be different. Greet's open mouth closed again. Either he has never learned these crappy things and has only heard the name, or he seems to have learned a little bit about them and has completely returned them to the teacher. Forget it, let senior sister do whatever she wants. Life will find its own path, and each world has its own development direction. Maybe after studying it, senior sister will unite with the spellcasters in this world to develop a new calculation method. Speaking of which, The magic structure of the conjuration system also has a programming feel, especially the conversion between spell configurations and spell runes. The construct enlightenment and tower spirit enlightenment techniques of the change system also endow a construct or a tower spirit with wisdom and artificial intelligence. Perhaps, taking these semiconductors back, we can make a better body for tolling. For example, making wafers and high-precision chips. Even if these semiconductor creatures are alive, they cannot be captured casually, otherwise problems may arise if they are captured. If you conduct enough research on them and analyze them enough, you can use the materials in this world to produce good enough semiconductors. Sister, please work harder, I'm optimistic about you, Greed nodded with a smile. I wanted to pat my senior sister on the shoulder, but I didn't dare because I was afraid of being beaten. This kind of action was too old-fashioned and didn't look decent. Greed is just giving advice. Senior sister, if you have time, talk more with the transformation department and the conjuration department. Maybe there will be extra gains. I've already talked to them. Philby leaned back and folded her hands. Regarding this new material, when I came back last time, I had a chat with the half-step legend of the transformation system, the Archmage Tenasai Langer. He was very interested. He saw the way atoms were laid, and immediately went to do experiments. Now, he should have achieved some results. The experiments are endless. The research is endless. If there are good projects, they can't always be in the hands of the Thunderhorn, or in the hands of the Plastic Energy Department. Let's all share a point. Hello everyone, that's what's really good. With a few more high-level mages and a few more legends, the overall strength of the council can also be improved. It's good for everyone, isn't it? As soon as the senior sister and brother said this, they were suddenly shocked and looked at each other. Immediately afterwards, Greet jumped up as if his butt was on fire and shouted. Tailing. I am here. Tolling's voice also had a bit of urgency. It was not like the usual warm and gentle tone. It was slow and leisurely, and occasionally buzzed, indicating I am very busy, I work hard, and I am very loyal to my master. But this time, Tolling's speaking speed was surprisingly faster than usual. It wouldn't be 50%, but it could be at least 20%. Moreover, his voice also became louder, and his intonation became more ups and downs. It was clear that he also looked like he had been stepped on. Abnormal energy fluctuations detected. Extremely strong abnormal energy fluctuations detected. Extremely strong abnormal energy absorption detected, energy fluctuations exceeding 500% of the daily average. Exceeding the peak value by 200%. Exceeding the peak value by 250%. Without such a series of yells, the faces of Greet and senior sister Philby had already changed color. Gretel was still thinking about this familiar fluctuation, but Philby had already made a conclusion. Legend. Is this a legend? This is the beginning of the sprint towards the legend, Philby said with a serious face. Contact the teacher. I will stay here to guard you. I won't go to Sky Dragon City these days. By the way, on your side, do everything you need to do. No problem. Gretel finally connected the fluctuations he felt now with the fluctuations he felt when he watched his senior sister advance to the legend. There is a saying, different schools, different magicians, the fluctuations of advanced legends are still very different. As expected, he still needs to see more legends in order to understand them better. Gretel thought this way and began to issue orders in an orderly manner. Turn off all experimental devices that require strong energy. Close all meditation rooms except the advanced one. The external communication channel is temporarily closed. Everyone evacuates the Mage Tower in an orderly manner. Set up a defensive array outside the Mage Tower. The Mage Tower increases its defense level. Increases its defense level. The power of the elemental pool is fully turned on. Full power supplies energy to the Mage Tower. These plans are all established plans to deal with when someone in the Mage Tower advances. Depending on the level and importance of the advanced person, the Mage Tower will give different responses. Now, Gretel has issued the highest level, half-step legendary mage to advance to legend, with the support provided by the Mage Tower. After the entire Mage Tower was operating at full capacity under the management of the Tower Spirit, Gretel breathed a sigh of relief and knocked on the table. The Tower Spirit is advancing. Who is it that is absorbing extremely strong energy? The one that absorbs energy is Meditation Room 0901, Talling replied. The one who recently registered and hasn't come out yet is the 19th level magician of the transformation system, the Archmage Tenasi Langer. Greet looked at his senior sister, and her senior sister looked at Greet. Their eyes were fixed, and they were speechless for a moment. After a long time, Philby Legend whispered. Is this a legend? This new material, does it have such great potential? Of course the potential is huge. That's a semiconductor. As a new type of material, semiconductors have sustained an entire era and countless industries. Without semiconductors, there would be no electronic industry and no electronic computers. After the steam age and the electrical age, semiconductors have opened a new era. If you can study it and understand it, even just a little bit, the feedback from the world will be enough to push a half-step legend into a legend. But Gretel could only swallow these words in his stomach. He tried his best to look directly at his senior sister and whispered. Probably, but I think it's probably because Archmage Langer has accumulated enough. It's just a matter of time. It's just a little bit. What's going on? We'd better wait for him to come out and see. The two stood up and came to the top of the tower, sitting in the place closest to the center of the Mage Tower, motionless. In the meditation room, in front of Master Tenasi Langer, a bright picture has been unfolded. Atom. 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 Atoms form molecules in various ways. And the quartz he purified, extremely pure quartz, under the control of his mental power, crystallized into very beautiful and well-proportioned crystals. Under the microscope scanning, the crystals were arranged one by one, extremely evenly. Like the hive of a bee, numerous hexagons are clustered together in exactly the same shape. And between these well-proportioned three-dimensional quartz lattice he named this thing crystal lattice. Little electrons can be felt rippling. It is very subtle and difficult to detect, but it cannot escape his mental power. Unlike wood, different from rubber, those electrons are a bit flexible, but not as flexible as metal. With just a touch, the electrons will fly out. Interesting. Very interesting. The mental power is extended to the limit and refined to the limit. He could even feel the existence of these electrons. Most of them were bound by atoms, but some electrons were bound by several atoms at the same time. And among so many electrons that are slaves to two masters and are involved by different atoms at the same time, there are one or two that are relatively active and free from the involvement of atoms. Give it some energy, for example, increase the temperature, and those electrons will become active, break away from the atoms, and start to impact in another direction. Go. Go. The current surges. It's really interesting, very interesting. When atoms are arranged together in a specific shape, the electrons in it will take on a completely different shape. It should be the difference in atomic distance. From this, we can try to study how these electrons exist in atoms. Archmage Tenasi Langer used his extremely delicate spiritual power to rub the quartz crystal in front of him back and forth. Heat, crush, and let them crystallize. Pour the acid, pour the alkali, put them in the solution, and let them crystallize. In the vacuum, use pure mental power, magnetic fields, and force fields to crush them to the limit, and then promote them to crystallize. Then, push and pull, trying to shape their crystals. Oops. Got it wrong. Take another one. This time, it should be neat and beautiful, and the crystals should be evenly distributed. Finally, Archmage Tenasai Langer discovered small holes among these crystals. When an electron escapes, a hole appears. And when an electron jumps to another place, a new hole appears. Great joy arose in his heart. However, feedback from the world swept in from all directions. Thanks to @book friend 201903141029222656 for the 100 starting coins reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1738. Tower Spirit, record the intensity of energy flushing that the Mage Tower has endured. Philby gave no orders at all. The Tower Spirit remained silent until Greet coughed and echoed, "Do as the senior sister said." Then it began to work hummingly. Yes, record. Recording the energy conversion properties of the outside world. Yes. Record the energy consumption of the Mage Tower and the nature of the energy. Yes, record. This is the benefit of having a Mage Tower. The predecessors planted trees, and the descendants took advantage of the shade. The records left by the predecessors in the process of advancement, and the descendants can take a look at them, and they will feel a little better. More importantly, with the record of a legend, the next legend advances in the Mage Tower, and the Mage Tower will know how to adjust. Set up defenses, sort out elemental fluctuations, and provide energy for the advancing half-step legend. Manpower is sometimes poor, and having a Mage Tower to help with the work is much more effective. The premise is that the Mage Tower must have enough records. So this is the benefit of the Tower of Babel. There is a strong enough tower spirit, a strong enough energy source, a strong enough mystery lock, and a strong enough magician to help control it. At the very least, external dangers that can prevent the mage from advancing, such as attacks, interference, insufficient external elements, too much elemental fluctuations, all are blocked out. Since the establishment of the Tower of Babel, the Magic Council has produced 50 or 60 legends one after another. Of course, 2/3 of this, whether it is fighting or exploring, has been lost, but the probability of advancement is much higher than that of the forces that are not covered by the Babel Tower, whether it is various churches or various nobles. Gretel has now begun to build up his own power, and the records of these Mage Towers are also part of the foundation. Of course, you can make a copy and give it to Babel Tower later. Hello, 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 everyone, and in exchange for some contribution. Tailing, show us the current intensity of energy flushing. Yes, sir. With a buzzing sound, a light curtain unfolded in front of Gretel. Gretel moved his position, shoulder to shoulder with his senior sister, looking at the zigzag lines on the light screen, trying to analyze the possibility of success of Archmage Langer's advancement. The spiritual power of senior sister and junior brother was intertwined and spread outward, feeling the fluctuations of magical power around them. Philby suddenly said, "It seems that the probability of success is quite high." The power fluctuations are stable and have been rising. At this stage, it is a good thing to be stable. Philby's eyebrows relaxed and she was very pleased. It would be a good thing for the council to have one more legend, it would be a great thing for Gretel's Mage Tower to have one more legend. I don't know what research breakthrough Langer made, come on, let's go out and take a look. Things like advanced vision still have to be seen clearly outside. The people in the Mage Tower have been evacuated, and all instruments and equipment that should be shut down have been shut down and their energy sources cut off. Cyrilla is still sleeping in the dragon's nest on the top of the tower. All the defenses that should be raised have been raised, so they cannot disturb her and will not affect her advanced sleep. At this time, leaving the Mage Tower will not make the Mage Tower out of control, and the tower spirit will fall into the hands of others. The tower spirit of this mage tower is at the half-step legendary level. When it was built, the possibility of other magicians advancing was taken into consideration, and targeted arrangements were made. Gretel smiled and nodded to his senior sister, then followed her and flew out of the mage tower to the square outside. Hundreds of magicians have stood neatly around the mage tower in a specific array, and various elemental lights have risen around the mage tower. This battle is not very big. Gretel stepped back, and then stepped back, and then stepped back again. Compared with the endless lightning waterfall when the senior sister advanced, the vision caused by the legendary advancement of Langer was really insignificant. Even the surrounding dragons were not too alarmed. Look, the time dragon Sains didn't even come over specifically to lie down in front of the mage tower and look at it, he just raised his head on the ridge from a distance. Compared to you, no one has a big battle. Filby glared at Gretel fiercely. When the junior brother advanced to the 17th level, the thunder light falls reached the ground, and the battle forced the entire mage tower to close its doors, and no one could take a step forward. Not to mention that when you advance to level 16, the powerful world gift infusion attracts various high-level monsters from hundreds of miles around, maybe 300 miles, maybe 500 miles away. The surrounding dragons, young dragons, adult dragons, mature dragons, all those who could come over to watch came over to watch. If the entire mage tower hadn't been facing an enemy from top to bottom and had formed the strongest defensive formation, there's no telling who would have wanted to take a piece of the pie. Greet smiled coquettishly, turned to look at the mage tower, and said nothing. He does not participate in this defensive formation. He is not familiar with this thing. It will be useless if he participates in it, and it may even be counterproductive. Filby did not stand in the defensive formation. As a legend, as long as she stood outside, she would have enough deterrence. Look at Idian and the legendary maple tree. Aren't they also standing far across from each other, forming a huge triangle with her? With them around, Gretel was just a fool, happy to focus all his attention on observation. Outside the mage tower, a gentle mist has emerged, spreading, gathering, scattering, and gathering again. And this time, the mist was a little different from anything Gretel had seen before. The white mist condensed into ice crystal-like existence. When the sun shines through the ice crystals, what shines out is not the rainbow-like light, but countless small grids of light and dark, black and white. It seems like it's really. Gretel muttered quietly. Filby gave him a quick glance. Really what? It's really about studying the things you gave me, senior sister. To advance, Gretel stared at the small grids closely. In his eyes, the alternating light and dark grids suddenly turned into 010101, 01010101. There is power, there is no power, there is power, there is no power. Two states and two signals, taken together, can create endless articles. Speaking of which, the great mage Langer also has one of his main research directions, construct enlightenment and mage tower spirit enlightenment. He was sent here to help build and maintain the mage tower at any time, and to help with the work of a large number of demon dolls to make up for the lack of manpower. Unexpectedly, I actually seized the opportunity and climbed up in one step. Filby also narrowed her eyes. What Gretel saw, she also saw, and more. Those ice crystals were arranged in an unusually neat manner, looking like the crystals of extraterrestrial creatures she had observed under a microscope. It's a little different, but it's also a little similar. What's more important is that there are very, very small existences flowing between ice crystals and ice crystals. Jump over again, jump over again. Is this the principle of semiconductors he observed? It was a little different from what she saw. To be honest, she should study why semiconductors can sometimes conduct electricity and sometimes not. She should not let others take the lead. Only. Is this research alone enough to support Langel's legend? Or maybe he has already accumulated a lot of money and is just one step away. Philby tried to feel and think hard. Before I could figure it out, there was a sudden crackle in the sky, and a bolt of lightning fell into the ice crystal. No, come again. Philby's mouth twitched. Under the mage tower, the magicians who formed a defensive formation were already talking about it and began to consider whether to retreat. Alarmed by the movement of the legend, the giant dragons that came over at some unknown time had already begun to retreat skillfully. They just want to take a look. Really just gotta take a look. No bad intentions. Just like the previous times, the endless thunder light fell down. It was so close that it made my body feel so hot and uncomfortable. Forget it, let's step back a little bit. Gretel raised his eyebrows. Theoretically, others cannot receive the gift of the world's will and will not be harmed by it. However, the elemental disturbance during the advancement process is another matter. Sarara is still in the mage tower, Sarara is still sleeping, and the only things that can protect her are the defense automatically raised by the mage tower and her own natural defense. Is Sarala going to be okay? It'll be okay, Philby grabbed her junior brother. The legendary mage who advanced with the power of lightning had a serious face. He stared at the mage tower and took a step back, then took a step back. Look, the lightning that came down is different from the time you advanced. It looks like you are just testing and adjusting, eh? Lightning crackled, penetrating into the ice crystals composed of clouds and mist, and heading straight towards the mage tower. After a moment, another bolt of lightning fell from another direction. It gets denser and denser, the lightning is like rain, and soon, a strong magnetic field rises from it, slowly rotating, slowly rotating. The electric light is like a snake, swimming among the ice crystals. After just a moment, Philby raised her eyebrows. Interesting, this new type of conductor can carry electricity in one direction. The magnetic field rises, cuts the conductor, and powerful alternating current flows naturally. However, the current flowing in the ice crystal can sometimes flow through, and sometimes it can be blocked. Maybe it's the structure of the ice crystal, or maybe it's something else. In short, it seems that it can only allow current to pass in one direction. This thing is very useful, Greet's eyes lit up. Rectifiers straighten alternating current into direct current rectifiers. In previous lives, who used mercury to make rectifiers? That thing was so big and fragile. God knows when the glass would explode, and the mercury would flow all over the floor, evaporate and poison everyone. Master Langer, no, Legend of Langer, work harder. Hurry up and invent the semiconductor rectifier. Then, look back and replace everything in my mage tower. Diode rectifiers are so easy to use. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1739. From the invention or discovery of semiconductors to the creation of rectifiers, there are still too many ways to go. Using semiconductor devices and electronic components to convert alternating current into direct current requires 4 steps. Rectification, filtering, voltage stabilization, overcurrent protection. Each step requires research and development of materials, research methods, research principles, and research on various components, research, production, assembly, and testing. If you want to get rid of this thing, even if there are high-level mages and legendary mages who use mental power to directly scan the perception and use spells to directly pinch things for testing, it will not happen overnight. Gretel estimated that if they could spend 1 or 2 years to develop it and another 3 to 5 years to adjust it to the power required by the mage tower, they would be considered very efficient. You know, the current demand for electricity in the mage tower, in addition to lighting, also needs to supply some instruments that use electricity for experiments. That demand is very big. When the instantaneous load is large, it often happens that several mercury arc rectifiers are burned out. The load of semiconductor devices is another matter. It needs to be pinched slowly, tested slowly, and calculated slowly. Although Greet doesn't know much about semiconductors, he also knows that there are several types of semiconductors, including silicon semiconductors, gallium and germanium semiconductors, and semiconductors with various strange compounds. After Archmage Langer, in 2 days, we may call him the Legend of Langer, after discovering the characteristics and uses of semiconductors, it is conceivable that in the future there will be a group of magicians who will search the entire world. All the simple substances and compounds that can be found are tested for electrical conductivity under various conditions. All the various compounds that can be imagined and possibly made are also tested. Gretel was thinking this, and saw the wind and clouds moving in the distance, and 2 giant dragons flying from a very far distance. The one whose whole body is blue and translucent, with a hint of crystal clear, should be a sapphire dragon. The other head looks like brightly polished steel. No need to ask, it must be a steel dragon. Ever since Gretel set up the mage tower here, Andre and Cynthia's territory has become a sieve, allowing dragons to come in and out. Fortunately, Sky Dragon City is on tight guard, so I don't have to worry about anyone sabotaging it. Is there another legend? Someone is actually a legend again. We are here to watch. We are just here to take a look. Take a look. They yelled from afar to show their intention. Greet saw that the time dragon Sains raised his head slightly, and his slender neck turned in one direction towards them, and then hung down comfortably. When the sapphire dragon and the steel dragon saw the time dragon Sains, they immediately turned a small corner and approached him. Not daring to get too close, I started to slow down a kilometer or 2 away. Finally, I found a spot on the hill next door and lay down side by side. It's amazing, there's actually another human being attacking the legend. Is this the second one? How long has it been? It's only been a few months since the last time someone was legendary. 1 month? 2 months? I don't know, I didn't pay attention. Anyway, I seem to have only slept for 1 night, but it has been at least 50 years since the last time someone made a legend. They did not deliberately control the volume. Greet stood outside the defensive circle of the mage tower and could hear clearly. Is it possible that the last time you are talking about is my teacher, His Excellency the Lord of Thunder? Anyway, it's very fast. It's really fast. Faster than our Dragon Clan's advanced legend. If our Dragon Clan's legend comes out at this speed, the elders will be laughing from ear to ear. Greet smiled, glanced sideways, and sighed silently, thinking he was stupid. Not to mention how many years of accumulation it took for Senior Sister and Archmage Langer to reach the halfway stage of legend. If the Dragon Clan follows the pace of my Mage Tower, it will advance to a legend in a month or 2, and a legend in a month or 2. Believe it or not, the ecosystem of Long Island has collapsed long ago. Dragon Island and Sky Dragon City can no longer hold so many legends. Immediately, a group of legendary dragons will be forced to migrate to different spaces, migrate to the stars, and physically travel across the universe to find their new home. That's why you stay here and watch it, right? Is it good to watch? Isn't it particularly interesting? The Sapphire Dragon admired for a while, then turned to ask the Time Dragon. Time Dragon Seth ignored him and ignored him. There was a faint layer of gray rippling around him. There were countless gravel-like things in it, refracting tiny rays of light. Gretel heard Sain say that this thing was the inside of his dragon's nest. It had been soaked in the energy fluctuations of his breath and body for a long time, and was soaked in the power of time. He called it the sands of time. With such a layer of sand barrier raised, the person who breaks through will have better luck. It means that time will stop and they will be frozen there for a few seconds to more than 10 seconds. If you are unlucky, you will be deprived of time and instantly age for several years, 10 years, tens, or hundreds of years. The dragons are a little better, relying on their long lifespan, they can barely resist. The short-lived species will basically die after being exposed to this. Not even the dragon clan dared to touch it for nothing. The sapphire dragon stretched his neck and looked around. Seeing that the time dragon Sains had an indifferent face and had no intention of paying attention to him, he had no choice but to turn his head and continue to whisper to the steel dragon. Look at the things condensed outside the mage tower. It's so strange. Why do I feel a little itchy? I feel that the things inside are somewhat related to me. Maybe it's because the things condensed in the mist are simulating gems. Steel Dragon looked up at the ice crystal in front of him and the various crystals condensed in the ice crystal. I'm not sure, it just looks a bit like, speaking of which, Base Hiyu is the expert. Although sapphire dragons like to eat giant spiders and various underground creatures, what they really love are various gemstones, especially sapphires, and regard them as the source of their power. Gem dragons are all like this. They understand the structure and characteristics of gems by tasting gems, so as to enhance their abilities. In fact, various gems can often be found among the glittering scales of the gem dragon. Now, looking at the ice crystals in the mist and the lightning flowing in the ice crystals, Sapphire Dragon felt itchy all over his body, as if there were lightning flashing across his body. What's even more strange is that he silently mobilized his magic power to raise magic defense on himself, but he felt that the flow of magic power was very stagnant. When it flowed to certain locations, it seemed that there was an extra rock there, which was particularly uncomfortable. He groaned, raised his head suddenly, and a gray light surged from his body, sweeping in all directions. The sapphire dragon shook his body vigorously, shook off some fine stone powder, and sighed. Ah, I finally feel comfortable. He shook his scales comfortably. At the same time, the steel dragon suddenly spread its wings and flew far around the mage tower, and then flew again. Hey, do you feel anything? If you said you felt a little uncomfortable, strange, like you were affected by something, like your power was a little blocked, then I felt it too just now. The sapphire dragon was pacing up and down on the ground, holding its head high and flapping its wings, showing the steel dragon the power flowing around him. Look, use the electric light to sweep it, or use other powers to repel the alien power nearby. Strangely, I feel that some power affects me and weakens me. Gretel's ears perked up, and he turned his head and looked sideways. Although the main component of sapphire is aluminum oxide, God knows what gems a sapphire dragon has swallowed and what shape of crystals it has formed in its scales. Maybe there is some kind of crystal, a semiconductor type, that was influenced by the legend of Langer, the great mage Langer in the mage tower. As for this steel dragon likes to eat metal, and eats all kinds of metals. The more he cherishes it, the greater his ability will increase. Maybe as he ate, he absorbed gallium, germanium, and other metals and turned them into part of his abilities. Just as he was thinking this, the fog covering the mage tower suddenly swelled and pushed outwards. The magicians arrayed outside the mage tower exclaimed, trying hard to maintain their formation, and flew outward in all directions. This is the most dangerous moment. From previous experience, this kind of time is the last step before the magician ascends to the legend, or before advancing. If you don't leave the scope of his power, you may be sucked in at any time, and you may be torn apart by the out-of-control energy at any time. Even Greet was grabbed by the collar by senior sister Philby and quickly retreated until she reached the side of Time Dragon Sains. However, Steel Dragon was not convinced. His wings trembled slightly and he flew a little slower. If he was not careful, he was wrapped in the mist. Ouch! 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 In the stream of light as bright as ice crystals, it panicked and crashed out. Without looking back, he flew over a dozen mountains in one breath, then flapped his wings and climbed straight into the sky. Under the wings and under the steel gray scales all over his body, there were countless debris and dust falling in the wind. The strong wind flowing through the sky was mixed with the panicked roar of the steel dragon. This legend can eat dragons. He can eat dragons. Run. Gretel, rightward arrow. Rightward arrow. Is it possible that people are just exploring the properties of semiconductors and debugging semiconductors? And there happened to be something slightly similar to a semiconductor in your body, and it was accidentally affected by him? Just as he was thinking this, the clouds and ice crystals in the sky suddenly disappeared. An archmage wearing a white robe, his hair tightly wrapped in a round hat, and his hands covered with calluses, flashed across the void and walked out of the mage tower leisurely. Around him, there were dots of stars, electric current flashing, and various translucent crystals, clinging to his side docilely. Who said I can eat dragons? Where have I ever eaten dragons? If you ruin my reputation, I will ask for compensation. Run. The sapphire dragon rose from the ground and followed the steel dragon away without looking back. Only Time Dragon Sains lay lazily on the ground, swung his tail, and cast a look of contempt at the two nominal kin. Bah, stupid Fanlong. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1740. Chapter 1735. There is obviously another legend, and the transformation system obviously has a bright future. Why? I want to go to Dragon Island. I must go to Dragon Island. The next airship will go. Your Excellency. Calm down, Your Excellency. Jade Crown in front of Lord Ripley, on the left, and on the right, three legends moved their steps, trying to block him. You bear the heavy responsibility of maintaining the Tower of Babel. When you leave, you need to hand it over to someone else. You need someone to replace you. You need to confirm that he is competent at the job. Look, what they have forced the legends to do. Legends and legends generally do not call each other Your Excellency or you. And now, three legends from the protection system, the conjuration system, and the illusion system are surrounding Mr. Ripley, saying Your Excellency and you. The legends of the spell system and the transformation system bear the heavy responsibility of maintaining the Tower of Babel and the mysterious locks of Igor Peak. The conjuration system is mainly maintained from the spell level, to ease the flow of elements here, and to reinforce the spell models there. The transformation department is mainly responsible for knocking and replacing some physical things. A brick, a wall, a pipe, or a magic crystal board for displaying information. In the words of Greet's previous life, one is in charge of software and the other is in charge of hardware. The curse department is responsible for writing programs, updating programs, killing viruses, and opening permissions. The change department is responsible for replacing motherboards, graphics cards, hard drives, memory or power supplies. Of course, in relatively small companies, one person is responsible for both software and hardware, and they are all under his control. However, if the company is larger, the people responsible for hardware and software may be separated. The Department of Change is the department responsible for hardware, and Mr. Jade Crown Ripley is the top person in charge of this department. What they shoulder is indeed a heavy responsibility. The newly replaced parts must fit closely with the old parts, the magic power must flow smoothly, and every channel must be connected accurately. If it's a little worse, the Babel Tower will not operate smoothly. If it's much worse, the mystery lock may get stuck somewhere, or the Babel Tower may even explode. Although low-level, mid-level, and high-level magicians are responsible for these tasks, there must be a general responsible person. Mr. Ripley is the general person in charge. Even if he wants to leave, the change department will find a legend to take charge in Nevis. The two sides will make a clear transition and ensure that the legend can work independently before leaving. This is not like the evocation system. The evocation system is a thug, used to defend against foreign enemies and intimidate all parties. The Lord of Thunder is not here, so as long as the high-end combat power is sufficient, several other legendary helpers can do his job. In the change department, the substitutability is too low, so you can't just pull in legends from other families to work. I will send Langer back when I get there. Come and go, at most a month, and nothing will happen if you are away for a month, Mr. Ripley said louder and louder. The old man's white hair was flying, and his stomach was bulging with anger, like a frog in full swing. Their transformation system now has 4 legends. 4 legends. The number of legends and evocations are equal. They should also have the same say as the evocation department. Of the 2 legends before, one was in the field of transfiguration and couldn't really help, the other, after training him, happily ran to another dimension to collect all kinds of materials he had never seen before. Rich experience and knowledge. Leave him here for 100 years, 100 years, 100 years. For 100 years, he was unable to leave the kingdom of Kent. You must come back within 7 days at most after leaving Babel Tower. Now the transformation system finally has a new legend. Still a legend in the direction of alchemy. A legend who is of the same lineage as him, has a professional counterpart, and can protect the Tower of Babel on his behalf. Also, there was news from Langer that he was inspired to step into the legend after studying the brand new materials from alien creatures obtained by Serfilby outside the world barrier. New material. New direction. This is the most solid pedal to advance into a legend. He has been trapped in Nevis for more than 100 years, and he has always relied on his magicians to explore outside and bring back all kinds of new materials. When those people were dragged back, they often did some research on their own and understood all the most important features. There is very little research value left for him and little feedback from the world. He is going to Dragon Island. He has to go to Dragon Island no matter what, new materials from outside the world, materials that can allow a high-level mage to step into the legend. If it gets into his hands, it should also help him reach the next level. Moreover, the news from Langer is that the research prospects of this new material are very broad, very, very broad. From theory to application, from application to expansion, as long as you make good use of it, it is not a problem at all to advance to 2 or 3 legends. How could he let go of such a good opportunity? How could I watch such good material slipping through my fingertips? The Dragon Clan does not allow these materials to enter the world barrier. If you want to study them, you have to go to Sky Dragon City, and then ascend to the meteor base outside the world barrier to have enough materials to play with. You are a legend. You can't just go to Dragon Island like this. You must at least communicate with Dragon Island first and get permission. Time and space barrier. Mr. Steiner took a step sideways and blocked the transformation legend again. Before. You're not a legend who advanced on Dragon Island. At least contact us first. Any country, any force with a legend, if foreign legends want to enter, they must communicate and obtain permission in advance, otherwise it will be regarded as a provocation. The weaker forces swallowed their anger, while the stronger forces just beat them out. On the contrary, Philby, Langer, and the previous Lord of Thunder were more likely to be accepted when they advanced to legend on Dragon Island. Generally, local forces will welcome new legends for a tour and build a good relationship with them, and will not kick them out immediately. Then I'll contact you. I'll contact you now. Mr. Jade Crown Ripley rushed left and right, but still couldn't escape, and went to the Tower Spirit Center angrily. The remaining 3 legends smiled bitterly. It is clear that the Council has another legend, and it is clear that the change system has found its future development direction. We can expect a blowout development. 2 good things come together. Why do they end up like this? Mr. Ripley wants to go to Dragon Island, but Mr. Langer, the new legend, doesn't want to go back to Nevis at all. What's so good about that place? It's really enough. It's better to stay on Long Island. His research has just begun. The properties of so many materials hauled from Dragon Tomb have only been initially tested. It is still early to completely sort them out and find their uses. Moreover, he also wants to go to Sky Dragon City, to go beyond the world barrier, to see and touch that new material with his own eyes. Congratulations, Mr. Langer. Philby smiled like a flower and raised her glass to the new legend. Langer Legend quickly followed up with a toast and saluted her. Congratulations, Sir Philby. Thank you for protecting me during my advancement, and Master Nordmark. Thank you for providing materials and research opportunities. Without you, I would not be where I am today. This must be said. He was able to advance to legend, and he owed Gretel a huge favor, and he owed the plasticity department another huge favor. He had to recognize this favor and pay it back one day. This is the result of your own efforts. Greet quickly raised his glass. In a circle, high-level mages toasted together. After the first round of toasts, Gretel smiled and asked, Sir Langer, can I ask you about your future plans? Do you want to build a new mage tower, return to Nevis, or do you have other plans and arrangements? Ah, then it depends on you. Even though Mr. Langer has already joined the legend, he is not too embarrassed to put on airs in front of Gretel, so he still keeps saying you. If you are willing to take me in, I will definitely continue to work in your mage tower. Only a fool would leave. Only a fool would start his own business. Build a new mage tower by yourself. Even if he is a transformation legend, many things can be done by hand. But where are the themed building materials? Where are the materials for the various components inside the mage tower? Many are precious magical materials that require a lot of processing and require a lot of pre-processing. It's just a low-level mage tower. You can easily turn fossils into mud and mud into stone to build a wall. Legendary high-level mage towers, such as Greet, this mage tower, originally transported an airship from Nevis. Also, where is the energy? Whether it is magic crystal mines, volcanoes, or other energy sources, they are all part of Dragon Island and require the permission and support of the Dragon Clan. Standing on his own, in the eyes of the dragons, Langer is no longer a subordinate of Master Nordmark. Do the dragons know who he is? When the time comes, it will be difficult to move forward. By the way, it would be even better if Sir Philby could help intercede and let me go to fight in the outer world. Go to heaven. Go fight those alien monsters. It would be great if you could see and touch those strangely conductive creatures with your own eyes. Of course, if you can help the Dragon Clan take down that small world and get a share of the pie. What a ready-made material. Lots of. A large amount. Endless. Whether it is for measurement, destructive testing, or even using it as the basis for future production, it is enough. God knows how tired he was from refining some silicon wafers before. According to Philby, that is a large amount of ready-made raw materials. Greet and the senior sister looked at each other without speaking. Greet thinks that it is better for a transformation magician to study on the ground. The subject of semiconductors is already huge enough. Philby felt that it was not her place to answer this question. To say the least, it should be the teacher who made the decision. Even she herself was taken out by the teacher and brought back under protection. Why should she bring this trouble to the teacher? No. I don't agree. The sound of Mr. Ripley's feet suddenly came from the tower spirit center of the mage tower. Langley. Come back here. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 1741. After all, His Excellency Jade Crown failed to get his wish. There is no way, the new legend, Mr. Langer, is unwilling to move no matter what, and if a legend is unwilling to move, there is usually no way to drag him up and force him to move thousands of kilometers. Even the method of deducting legendary equipment is useless. Mr. Langer, he is also a legend of the transformation system, and he is even the best at making things in the alchemy branch. Whatever legendary equipment he wanted, he could make it with his own hands. The high-quality materials obtained on Dragon Island and the high-quality materials obtained in Dragon Tomb were of a higher grade than the inventory in the Parliament's treasury. Speaking of this, Lord Philby is very sorry why she sent the materials she specified to Nevis. If she had known better, she would have stayed here and asked Lord Langer to do it for her. It also saves time on transportation back and forth, and can communicate face-to-face with Mr. Langer frequently. You can also conduct frequent tests based on her own situation to make fine adjustments to the equipment customized for her. And His Excellency Jade Crown, it is impossible to really abandon the Tower of Babel and the Mystery Lock of Igor Peak. That is the lifeblood of Parliament. It is the strongest fortress and the last refuge of the Parliament. There must not be any problems. So, as compensation, the Parliament stepped in and paid Lord Langer a large sum of money, to purchase his latest discoveries, including papers, detailed experimental records, future research directions and ideas. Then, these findings will be transferred to His Excellency Jade Crown for free, so that he can organize manpower to conduct research in this area after his daily work. Naturally, the two excellencies will definitely share their knowledge, communicate with each other and promote each other during their research. Perhaps, there will also be a scientific research competition on one of them, or on a few subtopics, but most likely it won't be too intense. Because according to Mr. Langer's estimation, this new topic has a very bright future. There are so many directions for research. As long as there are insufficient manpower and insufficient research, it is absolutely impossible to engage in vicious competition and fight for one result. Let's sort out each other's to-be researched lists and separate the projects, that's it. Jade Crown Mr. Ripley was appeased and received detailed information and additional research allowances. He finally calmed down and began to plan research arrangements, mobilize manpower, collect research materials, and vacate the laboratory. The new legendary Lord Langer also put an end to the worry of being forcibly taken away and began to work hard on his own research. At the same time, he was looking forward to a trip to Sky Dragon City. However, it is a pity that Philby's request, conveyed to His Excellency the Lord of Thunder and then to Sky Dragon City, was not approved for the time being. Transformation magician? In the direction of alchemy? Let's wait a moment, right? We heard that most of an alchemist's combat power lies in his equipment. In the meeting hall that was closed in a bud state, Emerald Dragon Tana spoke softly, which immediately aroused a burst of laughter in the hall. One by one, the giant dragons burst out laughing loudly from their seats and from the rooms they occupied. The single room, which is as vast as a hall, plays the role of echo very well, condensing the laughter of the dragons into the center of the hall, and then scattering it in all directions, inspiring even greater laughter. He has just been promoted. He hasn't had time to make legendary equipment yet, right? There are at most 1 or 2 pieces of protective equipment. I don't know if they can be used outside. There are definitely no legendary golems. Even if there are, they should be work type, research type, and absolutely impossible to be combat type. In short, I am very unfavorable about Lord Langer's combat effectiveness, especially after being separated from the alchemy equipment. Among the giant dragons, there was even a voice like this. He is not the legendary Philby. Ha 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 ha. Angzi, you must have suffered a loss last time because you were too eager to show off. I asked you to rush after beauties, beauties can beat you better than you. The legendary mage of the alchemy system is not a legend of the plasticity system. Once he stands up, he is a humanoid self-propelled weapon with full combat effectiveness. With or without equipment, it is just a matter of 100% or 150% combat effectiveness. I think we should not invite him outside for the time being. Finally, Elder Batista coughed lightly and made a decision. Give him some time to make equipment and increase his combat effectiveness. That small world will always be there, and the enemy will always be there. If you go a year or two later, or 3 or 4 years later, they won't run away. A newly promoted alchemy legend must have 3 or 5 pieces of legendary equipment and 7 or 8 legendary puppets before he can come out to meet people. It's better not to let him go out into the world with nothing, it's very dangerous. For such an eloquent reason, Red Dragon Angzi made a special trip to convey it to the newly minted legend, His Excellency Langer. Your Excellency's face turned from red to white, from white to blue, but he was too embarrassed to refute. Among the transformation magicians, those who specialize in human body transformation can load themselves with various spells, make themselves several times larger, transform themselves into 3 heads and 6 arms, turn their handles into roulette serrations, or simply turn into a red dragon and go up to fight. However, the team that specializes in alchemy usually hides behind them and sends various puppets, structures, and machines to rush in and fight. Some people who are really not good at fighting can even stay at home all their lives, building, repairing, refining materials, and testing materials. What the war is about has nothing to do with me. Even if Mr. Langer is not a man waiting for death, he will not have to rush out despite extremely high risks. He thought about it carefully and sighed. I understand the Dragon Clan's kindness. I will make all preparations and try to join the war again. Also, can you let me go to the base above and see with my own eyes the materials that Sir Philby has obtained? This. Red Dragon Angzi glanced at Philby subconsciously, and Philby smiled brightly, neither nodding nor shaking her head. Looking at Greet again, Greet smiled noncommittally. Angzi scratched his head and made the long red hair rustle. I'm not sure about this. I will bring your request to the Presbyterian Council and wait for the Presbyterian Council to respond after evaluation. Angzi spread his wings, sprinkled a string of sparks, and soared into the sky. Under his scattered trajectory, Gretel and his senior sister stood side by side, looking into the sky at the light beam hanging down from Dragon City. Philby looked around to make sure there was no third person in the office, and asked Gretel in a low voice. Do you think the Dragon Clan will let him go? It's hard to say, maybe I won't agree, Gretel replied even more quietly. Philby asked curiously. Why? I've been there. The teacher and I both went. The teacher and I can wander around on that meteor base as long as we want. Although the teacher's wife didn't go, it was because the teacher was concerned about her safety, not because the Dragon Clan didn't allow her to go. I'm afraid he's pregnant, Gretel shrugged. Philby was shocked. What? Mr. Langer is a man. Man. Even if you are in the transformation department, you will not turn yourself into a woman if you disagree. There are people in the control department next door who do this, but the effect has never been good. Moreover, even if she becomes a woman, she still cannot get pregnant. I asked the necromancer next door for help and even had surgery, but I couldn't get pregnant. Can advanced legends still have such side effects? Or is the dragon's ability too powerful to make men pregnant? She has never heard of it. Ah, it's just a joke. Greed regretted that he couldn't keep his mouth shut. At this time, he could only bite the bullet and explain. That is to say, I'm afraid that if he goes out for a walk and takes one look at the meteor base, he'll get pregnant. Then, when he comes back just what? There are nests of underground portals, nests of underground defense arrays, nests of various underground attack formations, and even nests of underground meteor bases. In a few years, there may be a bunch of meteorite bases suspended on top of the Tower of Babel in Nevis. That situation is awesome when you think about it, but from the perspective of the Dragon Clan, it might be very creepy when you think about it. Philby's beautifully shaped lips slowly opened into an O shape, and after a pause, she burst into laughter. Gretel, really, just say that Mr. Langer can imitate the dragon bass. How can such a weird statement come from? Gretel guessed it correctly. As expected, the dragon clan politely declined the request to open the meteor base, and only politely asked Sir Langer to make equipment with peace of mind. There will be a day when we go to war. As for the need for Philby to bring some alien biological residue, we will consider this. Of course, we must first ensure absolute safety and inactivate all these eggs. When we find a way to completely inactivate them, we will definitely bring you some. Langer legend sighed again and again, depressed, and could only accept the current situation. Alas, we have to maintain the daily work of the Mage Tower, we have to develop a new big topic of semiconductors, and we have to speed up the production of a lot of legendary equipment. Why do you feel so busy all of a sudden? How do you feel? Before, you had some time to rest and some free time to fish, but now you have nothing left. And finances are also in a tight spot. In the Mage Tower, the total points of the materials that can be withdrawn under the name of the Change Department are dropping sharply, and it is about to be in deficit. Just here, there are still people who are envious, jealous, and hateful, and there are people whose noses are not noses, and whose eyes are not eyes. Look, the half-step legend from the necromancy department next door remains polite to the legendary mage, with a sinister look on his face. It's already pretty good, at least the dragon clan allows you to go, but they just said that you should be ready before going. Unlike our necromancer family, even if someone advances to legend, the dragon clan probably won't let us go to Sky Dragon City. Langer legend. Is it possible that Your Excellency, Lord of the Plague, is half a necromancer himself? If he goes up there, it means you have all gone up there. Oh. With your words, you will be Black Crow Swamp's forever friend. The necromancer stretched out his hands with unusual enthusiasm. Come on, if you need any help from us, just ask. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1742. You have to work harder. The person next door in the plasticity department is legendary, and the one in the transformation department next door is also legendary. We also need to be faster. Speed up. If we don't come up with a legend quickly, we won't be able to get any rare materials in the Mage Tower. Yes, we really need to work harder on the protection system. The first batch of 4 half-step legends came, and 2 of them have already advanced. We must not be the last. Is it possible that the rare materials required by the necromantic department are different from those of other departments? Chirp, chirp, chirp. When only one person ascends to legend, everyone is not only envious, but their emotions are relatively stable. Philby Legend is the senior sister of Master Nordmark. She enjoys the best research conditions and has the guidance of the Lord of Thunder. It is normal to be the first to enter the legend. This kind of resource is not the envy of others. The second Archmage has entered the legend, and the Archmages of other departments are a little bit restless. It's okay to be the second child, but it's a bit ugly to be the third child. No one wants to be the last one. Both the Protection Department and the Necromancer Department have started a vigorous overtime campaign, although their previous overtime hours have almost reached the limit of human beings. Several other departments, led by them, also began to work hard. As for the plasticity and transformation systems, they can't relax just because they have a ready-made legend. In fact, both Philby and Langer have already started communicating. Teacher, would you like to bring over some more half-step legends from home? Your senior brothers, their qualifications are relatively limited, and they have not reached the threshold of half-step legend yet. Speaking of this, the Lord of Thunder was also a little distressed. The few disciples he accepted before and after Burbo and Philby were not particularly qualified. Either they are still lingering on level 16 or 17, or they are stuck in front of the big pass, so that they leave early and go to another space to seek opportunities for breakthrough. For example, Carlyle, the youngest before Gretel entered the game, was level 14 when Gretel entered. Gretel is already level 17 now. He has only struggled to reach level 16 and is already left behind by little Gretel. Alas, don't be too greedy, definitely can't be too greedy. 3 legends in one class, plus Gretel who is almost destined to become a legend, it is 3 legends in one class, which is unprecedented in the entire Magic Council. For other disciples, it would be good if they could advance, but if they couldn't, just let it be. There are so many legendary mages in the council, and even now, there is no guarantee that each one will have a legendary disciple. In this way, you sort out the research needs here, and then hang them out in Babel Tower and Thunder Tower. In addition to my disciples, in addition to the magicians of Thunderhorn, you must also give others a chance. For example, in the light system, their efforts are greatly needed to study the photoelectric effect. Bayebo also discovered a way to penetrate rubies with electricity to stimulate extremely lethal beams, but he could not do so many experiments by himself, nor could his disciples and grandchildren. In the past 2 years, the Magic Council has had a rare situation where there are too many local resources, too many tasks, and too few manpower. We need to quickly put people to use, urge them to work, and help them advance. Philby nodded and went to work hard. As for the change department, Jade Crown, Mr. Ripley and Mr. Langer discussed it and decided not to send anyone over for the time being. If you want to test the properties of various substances, it would be better to work at the Nevis headquarters. At the very least, here in Babel Tower, there are enough stocks of various materials. Unlike Dragon Island, materials are transferred there at the beginning just to build the Mage Tower and for daily research. It is absolutely impossible for all kinds of miscellaneous, low-value, and inexplicable things to be stuffed over to Long Island. Only Gretel didn't care whether these things existed or not. Legends are still too far away from him. Whoever can produce one more legend or who can ascend to the legend faster will not have much influence on him. The only impact is: Senior Sister, are there any breakthroughs on your side? Is there any breakthrough in the research on the targeted intervention of high-energy rays on chromosome points? It seems a little bit, but I'm not sure yet. Give me some time. Philby hesitated. It is indeed much more convenient to use the legendary spells from a high position and try them later and then work backwards. However, even though it is much more convenient, there are still many obstacles. So far, Philby has only tried to use current that changes voltage in a very short time, and it is possible to achieve directional charging. However, how high does the voltage need to be, how fast does the frequency of transformation need to be, and how strong/weak the current needs to be, so that it can charge the chromosome points without damaging the body itself? Philby felt that she still had many experiments to do, even if there were a large number of disciples, students, and assistants in the laboratory. She still had to spend time formulating plans, spending time checking, and spending time verifying. Besides, Sir Langer, is there any breakthrough here? Regarding what I mentioned last time, writing data inside semiconductors in order to store and utilize large amounts of information. Ah, that's still early. Legend Langer frowned. None of the materials I am testing can carry too much data, and it requires mental power to carve it in bit by bit. This is too troublesome and absolutely impossible. I have to think of other ways. Method. That, cut it, then do the coding, and then write on the coding? Or cut it, then apply photoresist, and then write on it with ultra-shortwave ultraviolet light emitted by the photolithography machine? Greet tried to shut up and didn't say a word. If these questions are expanded even a little bit, if Langer Legend asks how to cut, why to apply photoresist, what is the formula of photoresist, why to use ultraviolet light, he will be finished. However, he shut up, but the other party did not let him go. Legend Langer looked left and right, pulled him back a step, pushed him into his own little world, rubbed his hands and whispered. Mage Nordmark, do you need research materials? What research materials? Greet was confused. Did you find any strange material? What did you find that was worth experimenting with? No, why is your expression so obscene? Look, at my age, all my sons and grandsons are dead, and the younger ones are useless and not close to me. Master Nordmark, you also want to help those dragons, can you help me? Gretel. But you can only provide sperm. What to do with eggs? That's not easy to handle, Legend Langer said matter-of-factly. I'll put a reward on it. As long as the reward is enough, there will definitely be a woman who is willing. Master Nordmark, you are willing to help me, right? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1743. Mage Nordmark. Mage Nordmark, you will definitely help me with this, right? Mage Nordmark. Gretel suddenly came to his senses. He subconsciously wanted to shake his head to wake himself up, but when his head was about to move, he quickly stopped. For this reason, I almost twisted my neck, causing a faint pain. Oh. I need to think about this. This topic is quite difficult and involves many issues. I have to think about it. He didn't say he agreed, nor did he say he didn't agree. Although Langer Legend was a little disappointed, he knew he couldn't force it. Seeing Greet's knotted brows and solemn look on his face, he had no choice but to sigh and let go of the small world. Mage Nordmark, I still ask for your help. You see, there are still many legendary mages in the council. Among them, there are also many legendary mages who are not married or have no children. There are also many legends in other directions. If even half, no, even 1/3 of these legends have the need to have children, this is a project with extremely bright prospects. It is conceivable that if Gretel completes this project, 1/3 of the legends will ask him for help, and 1/3 of the legends will be friendly to him. The remaining third, at least, will not be hostile to him because of this project. In order to complete this project, according to Langer Legend, in addition to various instruments and equipment, the most critical resources needed are sperm and eggs. Legendary sperm, legendary egg. Then, if not legendary eggs, at least there are legendary sperm, and lots of eggs. In this regard, Langer Legend feels that he can be of great help. Hey, look, I'm willing to fund this project. He walks step by step beside Greet, lowering his voice and speaking in a quick tone. You see, I can provide unlimited sperm. Mage Nordmark tilted his cheek. Legend Langer's heart skipped a beat and he quickly changed his words. It should be said that it provides a large amount of sperm that is enough for your research. You can't say the word infinite randomly. It's a mystery. After all, he is old. I can even collect enough eggs for you to study, at my own expense. Yes, from my own pocket, not research funds. Where can I find a researcher as cooperative as him? Greet's footsteps finally stopped. To be honest, he also wants to start this project. This project is so important. First of all, human eggs are much easier to prepare than dragon eggs, and the culture period is also shorter, which can greatly reduce the difficulty of experiments. Secondly, the teacher can't tell when it will be needed. Although my senior brother is single now, he is just like the teacher. He doesn't consider marriage until he reaches legend, but will he consider it when he reaches legend? Senior sister is even less likely to consider getting married, but if you don't get married, maybe that doesn't mean you don't want to have a child. Not to mention himself. He himself is a half-elf, and the difficulty of having descendants is only a little easier than that of elves. His previous plan was to marry Cyrilla until legend, and Cyrilla is still a dragon. For some technologies, it is always a good idea to be prepared and have technical reserves. However, research should not be done at the expense of others. Gretel half turned his face, stared at Langer legend, and said seriously, "There are many issues involved in this study. The two most important points are, first, I must ensure that the women who provided eggs did so of their own free will and were not exploited. Of course I won't force." Langer's legendary man raised his eyebrows and answered hastily. Of course he would not force those female magicians, absolutely not. He is a noble legend, a figure who stands at the top of the magician hierarchy. As long as he reveals a little bit of meaning, many female magicians will naturally come to his door voluntarily. What's more, he won't refuse to pay him, he will pay him lots and lots of money, right? It will definitely make the other party feel that the reward and the effort are equal, or even exceed the effort. Gretel raised a palm to stop him. His face was extremely solemn, so solemn that as soon as Langer legend made eye contact with him, he automatically stopped speaking and listened to him say, "Of course I believe you won't force them. However, voluntary and voluntary are completely different things. For example, the prostitutes in Flower Street sold themselves voluntarily, but are they really voluntary? There are also those women in previous lives who voluntarily sold their eggs. How many of them only know that as long as they take 2 injections and sell their eggs once, with no risk, no pain, and no side effects, they can get tens of thousands of dollars in exchange? How many of them know that in order to sell their eggs, they need to take an ovulation-stimulating injection containing a very large amount of hormones, which can lead to hormone imbalance, high swollen ovaries, premature ovarian failure, early menopause, and an increased risk of cancer? How many of them know that selling eggs requires an egg retrieval needle with a diameter ranging from 0.9 mm to 1.6 mm and a length of 35 cm to be inserted into the ovary once, twice, or many times to retrieve at least 10-15 eggs? It would be fine if it was a regular hospital and a regular doctor, but those underground black clinics, with incomplete disinfection and poor techniques, would have a certain probability of causing inflammation, pelvic effusion, massive bleeding, and even life-threatening. And the more illegal the eggs are sold, the greater the possibility of facing such risks. In the hospital in Greet's previous life, several women came to the hospital shouting for help after having problems retrieving eggs in underground clinics. The senior doctors in the obstetrics and gynecology department, as well as those colleagues, all gnashed their teeth with hatred when talking about it. Why is the little girl so stupid? Will believe this kind of propaganda? Everyone who does this kind of propaganda and makes money through this method should die. They all deserve to be cut into pieces. Not to mention those women who are surrogates, how many of them are voluntary, and how many are voluntary, to build a house for their family, for their brother's gift, to help their brother buy a car? How much of their income from surrogacy can really go into their own hands and be used at their own disposal? There is no need to consider making money in this way. After forming path dependence, it will be difficult to work and make money through normal social labor. Thinking like this, his voice was full of pressure, even deep to the point of sadness. Legend Langer was suppressed by his momentum and was speechless for a moment before he said, "Of course a female magician is different from a prostitute. Yes, female magicians are of course different from prostitutes. They have greater autonomy and the ability to protect themselves and control their own destiny." Gretel nodded lightly. "But let's give an example, just an example. Suppose you were in your lab, among your students, and initiated such a recruitment. So, are your female students really voluntary when they provide you with eggs? Are they sure they won't be oppressed because of your academic status, or do they want to use this donation in exchange for better research conditions?" Gretel had seen a lot of this kind of situation in his previous life. The so-called academic dadgy or something like that, there will be such rumors from time to time in the research community. However, without the academic King Joe, where would the academic dadgy come from? In other words, as long as there is academic King Joe and no academic Daji, there will also be academic Feizhong, academic Yuhan, even academic Mizixia, academic Dongxian. Lundgren legend was speechless. He opened his mouth and realized that his vow of "I definitely won't" might not necessarily get the result he wanted. As Greet said, would he really not look at a female student who provided him with eggs in a different light? After paying enough remuneration and feeling that the money and goods were settled, would he really not favor them in the laboratory and in the research? Or, would he really not regard his disagreement with egg donation as disloyalty and unwillingness to dedicate, and intentionally or unintentionally withdraw his support for certain female magicians? Also, what do other people in the lab think? Will there be bullying? Will there be strife? Will there be changes in the atmosphere in the laboratory that he doesn't want to see? He felt that he was almost convinced. However, for the sake of my own face, I still have to struggle. What about number 2? Second, I have to protect the interests of those children. You know, this is a new technology, and new technology always has flaws. Children who are combined like this and born like this, if there are all kinds of modifications to chromosomes, or targeted strengthening of chromosomes, will always fail. If a fertilized egg fuses naturally, implants naturally, and stays in the mother's womb until delivery, it will go through a series of elimination processes. Generally speaking, this kind of natural selection will eliminate the vast majority of beings that are not strong enough or healthy enough. However, if we do not use surrogacy, which involves a lot of trouble, but directly use an alchemy warehouse to replace the mother's body to speed up research, what will happen if the children created have various defects? You can't just ignore it after it's born. I understand. The new legend lowered his head and let out a long breath. Master Nordmark, you really see further than I do. On this project, I listen to you. When you say it will be turned on, it will be turned on, and how you say it will be done, it will be done. Thank you for your understanding. Gretel bowed in return. He slowly left the legendary little world of Langer. As soon as he walked back to his room, he sighed deeply, started pulling his hair and rolling on the sofa in the study. So hard. So hard. It's so hard, so hard, so hard. We must start this project without violating medical ethics. If we are wrong, we must not cause greater and uncontrollable consequences. Now that I think about it, the seniors who formulated medical ethics were really compassionate. I don't want to hurt this one, and I don't want to hurt that one either. It may cause a little harm, but try not to expand it as much as possible, and try to strike a balance between medical progress and the rights of patients. I didn't understand it when I endorsed it, but when I started using it myself, I began to make policies myself. Why doesn't the teacher explain it in more detail? Why don't you give a few more examples? Why not set up a few more cases and convene group discussions? What's wrong with you? The room lit up, a bolt of lightning fell, and senior sister Philby appeared in the lightning. Greet was startled and sat up. It's okay, the recent subject is a bit difficult, I can't think of anything. What topic is stuck? Philby stepped forward with a smile, turned half sideways, and sat on the armrest of the sofa. She sat down, and Gretel had no choice but to move to the side, and then move to the far end of the sofa to sit upright. This and that. Is there any request from Langer? I saw that he came to you today. Philby asked casually. After a pause, he said with concern again. Ignore him. His thing is very rare. If you have any problems, ask him to come to me. Gretel nodded subconsciously. Halfway through clicking, his jaw froze, and he immediately turned to shake his head. Wait. Just let him come to me. Langer is going to have a baby. Have a baby. For this kind of research, let him interact with senior sister. Senior sister, have you ever been harassed by him? Have you really never been harassed by him? What are you looking for? Philby glanced over in surprise. His project involves the observation and research of electrons and the relationship between atoms. This is not what you are good at, right? Why are you forcing yourself to come forward? Just ask him to come to me and that's it. Gretel, T. But he couldn't say or explain to his senior sister what Mr. Langer was doing. I had no choice but to rack my brains. Senior sister, you said that his project involves the study of the relationship between electrons and atoms. What is it like? Senior sister, can you tell me about it? Well. Philby looked at Gretel up and down for a long time with a look like how can I tell a layman like you. It was not until Gretel was being looked at that he could not sit still, his hair stood on end, and he was about to run away at the next moment, then he slightly raised his hand. To put it simply, it looks like this. Different atoms form various molecules, and the structure of their combination is roughly like this dash. A piece of bright light flew up, and the light shone in front of him, and the shape of a diamond appeared. From diamond to graphite. From graphite, it becomes loose carbon atoms one by one. From the carbon atoms, it becomes a structure that Gretel was very familiar with in his previous life. Around each carbon atom, 4 carbon atoms form a covalent bond. The carbon atoms are arranged at equal intervals, and the bonds between the atoms are firm. 5 carbon atoms build a regular tetrahedron, and the regular tetrahedrons are stacked one after another, extending infinitely outward. We repeatedly exploded, calculated repeatedly, and conducted explosion experiments with the smallest amount of carbon elements. We speculated that only this structure can explain the atomic structure of diamonds. Philby Legend said leisurely. Based on this structure, we speculate that the way atoms grab electrons to each other should be. She spoke at length. Greet felt a little dizzy after hearing this. Senior sister, have you gone deep into the field of atomic bonds so quickly? Also, senior sister, there are many electrons in a carbon atom. Why is there only this one hanging around? Where have the other electrons gone? Where are the other electrons? Also, senior sister, is it possible that the spell structures you see in the chromosomes are related to these structures? Girls who read this chapter today, even if they saw it through pirated copies, please don't sell your eggs, absolutely. Please. It's really hurtful to the body. Also, you must be very careful when doing in vitro fertilization. The previous ovulation stimulation injection and egg retrieval process are also very harmful to the body, but regular medical institutions will be slightly better. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1744. Philby's face suddenly turned serious. The new legend turned to look at Gretel, then at the atomic structure shadow she had sketched, then at Gretel, and then at the atomic structure shadow. It sounds slightly possible. Well, the ideas and conjectures that Greet put forward, even if they were just scratching her head, were worthy of her research and try. What if it's really reliable? What if it is really feasible? Of course, this conjecture is just a small possibility. There is still a long way to go before we can jump from possibility to verification that this is the case. Well, the first step is to prove that the atomic structure in the molecule looks a bit like the magic model. Philby lowered her head and thought for a moment. To remind her of the atomic structure of diamonds, and which spell's structure is more similar, she really couldn't think of it for a while. In other words, because this structure is too common, too special, too uniform and stable, there are not many spells she knows that have such a small model. To prove that this small piece is related to the atomic structure of diamond, first, you have to find a spell that uses diamond as a casting material. Next, prove that this spell has a spell configuration fragment that is the same as the diamond atomic structure. Finally, it is proved that when casting a spell, it is the atomic structure of the diamond that resonates with the relevant configuration in the spell, thus playing a key role. Philby thought over and over again, starting from the 3-ring spell of the transformation system Diamond Steel, to the 4th ring spell of the plasticity system Steel Diamond Explosion, and then to the 8-ring spell of the control system Photography Soul Emblem. After much deliberation, she sorted through all the spells she knew that used diamonds as casting materials, from low level to high level, but still couldn't find even a single entry point. These spells, even the lowest level spells, are too complicated in configuration. She thought for a while, then stared at the diamond configuration for a while, then suddenly raised her hand again, and a small section of the double helix structure, a fragment taken out of the chromosome point, lit up in front of her eyes. In the fragment, dots and dots, different horizontal lines, vertical lines, curves, and broken lines, constitute a specific and subtle spell configuration. It doesn't look like it. Philby looked left and right and muttered. It must be said that it is okay to connect certain atoms to form a spell structure. However, no matter how you look at it, it is a bit far-fetched. There are so many atoms that can be connected into this shape. There are too many atoms in a chromosome segment. They form small molecules, which are then combined into large molecules, and the large molecules twist into double helices. It seems that if I connect it casually, I can connect it into the configuration I want. If I connect it back and forth, can I connect 17 or 18? Then why should I say that what I connected is correct? Philby sighed in annoyance. Gretel sighed next to him. He took it for granted that atomic bonds were so complex. There are 5 types of optical atomic bonds: ionic bonds, covalent bonds, metallic bonds, molecular bonds, and hydrogen bonds, each of which has different causes. Understanding atomic bonds would have been worth how many Nobel Prizes in the previous life? Anyway, after figuring out the strong interaction force, he wouldn't be surprised at all if a few more legends pop up in the plasticity department. By the way, does anyone know how to break atomic bonds to release energy? He only knows if chemical bonds are broken, will it release, or absorb energy. When it's over, he returns it to the teacher and has to look up the book again. Is this mentioned in medical physics? Anyway, observing these spell configurations from a macro perspective and trying to map them to the microscopic molecular structure and atomic bonds gave him the feeling that it was a bit like looking up at the sky and trying to outline the stars into constellations. God knows that it is actually 3-dimensional. The distance between 2 stars in a constellation and the Earth can be several to hundreds of light years away. Maybe this method may not be reliable. He slumped down depressedly, then slumped again. But senior sister, if you can figure out how electrons exist, how they exist around the nucleus, and how they exist when atoms are aggregated into molecules, then you will be successful. I don't want to post it. How electrons exist around the nucleus, I still haven't figured out yet. Philby looked at Gretel expressionlessly. Don't say I didn't understand it, not even the teacher understood it. The only thing that is certain is that electrons will jump around uncontrollably and will appear in different states under the influence of observation. So, taking advantage of this phenomenon, I sent out a bolt of lightning that could appear in 2 places at the same time without being observed. I can make a bolt of my lightning travel across space and appear directly where I want it to appear. I can also let these electrons take me into a space jump state for a short time, or catch other enemies in this state. But I still don't know how they exist. I still don't know how a single electron exists around the nucleus of a hydrogen atom. How do a large number of electrons exist around a relatively large atomic nucleus, such as the nucleus of an iron atom, such as the nucleus of a copper atom, such as the nucleus of a uranium atom? Will they hit each other? Will there be a fight? Oh, the collision won't hit because negative charges repel like charges. But are they whirling around the nucleus? All the electrons spinning around together? Under what circumstances do they release energy? Will they disperse at once, with all the electrons running away together? Or will only one electron escape? On a metal plate, current conducts through an electron from the next atom, an electron from the next atom, still enveloping the metal. 3 to 5 electrons per atom, 10, 7 or 8 electrons go together. Philby let out a long sigh. She suddenly stood up, waved her hand, and jumped out. There was a crack of thunder outside the window, and a bolt of lightning pierced the sky and the earth, but Philby had already jumped into the lightning and was far away. The only solution to worries is experimentation. She still has a lot of experiments to do. Use light, use various kinds of light, illuminate various metal plates, various other substances, and then measure the voltage changes on them. Until now, machining accuracy has been an issue. The voltage she measured here either didn't measure anything at all, or the data jumped up. Philby intuitively believed that this road would also have great development, but it was limited by observation methods. Over there in the Department of Change, when can I give you something good? Isn't there already a legend? Mage Nordmark. Mage Nordmark, whoever comes to mind will arrive, Legend Langer rushed over excitedly. I thought of the problem you mentioned. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1745. Greet looked at him expressionlessly, walked out expressionlessly, and asked the legend to sit down expressionlessly. What is this guy doing here? What did I tell him before? What problem? Semiconductor. Wafer cutting? Write data into it? Programming. Programming. Upgrade the shelter of the Mage Tower Spirit to semiconductor mode? Or, make a semiconductor rectifier or something. Did I say that? Langer Legend has already spoken excitedly. As soon as he opened his mouth, Greet felt his vision go dark, and almost called the Tower Spirit to blast the person out. I thought about it. Collecting eggs from female magicians, especially from the female magicians in the Mage Tower, will indeed cause a lot of problems. Let's just change the target. Gretel had a bad feeling. He looked at Langer cautiously, and sure enough, His Excellency Langer was beaming with joy and foaming at the mouth. I mean, humans can have children with humans, and they can also have children with other humanoid creatures, right? For example, barbarians, jackals, lizardmen. When he said a word, Gretel shook it. By the time the legend finished talking about all the humanoid creatures on Dragon Island, giants, dwarfs and other humanoid creatures with large size differences were not included, Gretel had leaned back on the chair and grasped the armrests of the chair tightly. No, you mean, you plan to? Greet opened her mouth, then closed it, opened her mouth again, and closed it again. It took him a long time before he answered tremblingly. No. Your Excellency, your taste, is too strong. What's so bad about this? I don't need to sleep with them, Langer Legend replied in surprise. As long as humans and these races can have children, it means that human sperm and their eggs can be combined, right? Well, theoretically yes, Gretel stiffened his neck and nodded reluctantly. Langer continued as a matter of course. Then it's very simple. If you want eggs, just buy them from the females of these tribes. I've asked before, you let the spellcasters of their tribes undergo transformation, they may die, and each tribe gives a low-level magic equipment. Low-level magic equipment, for example, magic equipment of 3 rings and below, is that a problem for him, a transformation legend? He closed his eyes. No, the lowest level magician in his laboratory closed his eyes, and rubbed at least 10 pieces in an hour. Less than 10 items are considered unqualified. And for such a magical equipment, buying 10 eggs from a female is a very, very generous price compared to the price Greed paid for his previous experiments. In fact, this price is enough to buy 10 eggs from all the young females in a tribe. Is an egg retrieval operation for each person worth the life of a tribal spellcaster? Greet opened her mouth, then closed it, opened her mouth again, and closed it again. Very well, by doing this, first of all, the problem of academic corruption is gone. It does not involve the problem of female magicians providing eggs. Secondly, what should we say about the human rights issue of egg donors? As long as they are not human beings, there is no human rights issue. Or, as long as they come from fields with low human rights, they are less likely to have human rights problems? Why does it feel like it is similar to those big European and American pharmaceutical companies testing drugs in India? What about the child? What to do with the child? This is just an experiment. Legend Langer spread his hands in boredom. Since it's an experiment, don't let the child be born, right? It's impossible for me to actually have a child with these guys. It's just an experiment to make sure it works, and then I'll go find a lady who is worthy of me. Well, there is really nothing to be reasonable about medical ethics with high moral standards when faced with low moral standards and low human rights conditions. Gretel felt weak. He wanted to jump up and shout, "Lizard people's lives matter, and the human rights of jackals deserve respect," but he couldn't say it out loud. If you have enough food and clothing, you will know etiquette. If you have enough warehouses and warehouses, you will know honor and disgrace. Human rights, dignity, even medical ethics are based on relatively high productivity. Regarding this matter, if Legend of Langer really communicates with the Dragon Clan to give rewards and issue tasks, it is estimated that the surrounding tribes will bring all their women of appropriate age and rush over overnight to compete for this opportunity, right? When the time comes, he himself, who is determined not to do this experiment, will look like he is being hypocritical, and people will wonder, "What are you struggling with?" or even, "Why did the Legend of Langer offend you?" But, I really don't want to do it. It feels like my hands are dirty just thinking about it. Gretel is tangled, Gretel is twisted, Gretel is speechless. At one moment he wanted to smash the pot, "I just don't want to do this crappy experiment," and at the next moment he tried to comfort himself, "Calm down, you can't do this to a legend." After being depressed for a long time, under the intense gaze of Legend Langer, I finally found a reason. The combination of sperm and eggs between humans and humanoid creatures may be more difficult, and the technical difficulties encountered will be different. In the end, it may be half the result with twice the result. If possible, it is better to use humans. Langer Legend came excitedly, but was immediately poured cold water on his head, and couldn't help but frown. However, he could not deny Gretel's conclusion, at least theoretically. In this case, we can only find another shortcut. Using humans, that would be troublesome. It would take a month or two to transport people from Nevis. Maybe a month or two more. Young, healthy women must be selected, and they must be sent all the way from Nevis to Long Island, and then back to Nevis from Long Island. Moreover, women who can be sent back and forth like this must be energetic and have strong fertility, and cannot be sallow, thin, or sickly. You know, the women in the slums who can be bought with a gold coin have very doubtful health. If their eggs are used for experiments, the success rate must be appallingly low. And a woman who is healthy enough usually means that her family is well off. I am afraid that she cannot be dragged around casually. There is really no other way but to bleed out and hire a group of female mercenaries. Greet looked at him intently, but hesitated to speak. He now understood why many of these studies used voluntary donated sperm and eggs, otherwise, the researchers would really feel uncomfortable. I think of the women in the slums of Nevis, the washerwomen with wrinkled and chapped hands, the poor people who were kept in captivity by the necromancy school and had their blood drawn whenever needed, the little children in the orphanage. Gretel felt that just thinking about using these women as test subjects made his conscience tremble. "I think so," he tried his best to stand from the perspective of an experimenter and provide opinions objectively and neutrally, while also adding some obstacles to Langer's legend. You are already a legend. It is best for the egg provider to be stronger, so that the success rate will be greater. You see, the existence of extraordinary points in the chromosomes of both parties shows that the energy is strong enough. If the energy of one side is too weak and the energy supply is insufficient, the chromosomes on the other side will be more likely to be broken during replication. He casually summoned the virtual image, simulating and explaining at the same time. Legend Langer watched with concentration, for a long time, and suddenly said, "So, a stronger mother, such as a high-level warrior, is more likely to give birth to a child with a high-level man, right? Theoretically, this is like this: the higher the level of the child, the greater the energy demand, and the stronger the mother's body is required to be able to provide it." Gretel was careful and racked his brains. "So you see, high-level dragons usually look for dragons of the same level, or at most one level lower than them, to have children. High-level monsters usually look for similarly powerful monsters. Then I understand. I'll try my best to find a high-level one." Legend Langer stood up, bowed to Greet to express his gratitude, and walked away. Gretel chased after him and shouted, "Who are you going to find?" "A female warrior. A high-level one." Langer Legend slowed down slightly and said calmly, "It's hard to find them in China, they are basically nobles, but you can go to the New World to find them. You should be able to find them in the Eagle Kingdom, right? Oh, I remember that female snakes seem to be infected with death energy, so, go to the Kingdom of the Sun to find them. Try to find." He remembered reading the notes written by other magicians. Many of the priestesses of the Kingdom of the Sun, virgins of the sun, were very powerful. With both combat skills and divine skills, he becomes a high-level warrior and a high-level priest. Such a priestess must meet the requirements. Hey! The sun virgins are all wives of the sun god. They are the prepared wives of the sun god, Greet sweated. Legend Langer looked at him in surprise. "What's that? Isn't it the property of the sun god? I'm a legend too, and I won't rob it. Why don't I buy a few from the sun god?" "Well, priestess of the sun god equals property of the sun god equals could be bought and sold equals female slaves had no human rights. The logic is smooth and flawless. It's not me that's wrong, it's this world where productivity is not developed enough. Human beings can be bought and sold, and treated as property, and human rights are completely irrelevant." But Gretel really had no other choice. In particular, the legend of Langer is still saying, "The high-level priestess is a high-level transcendent after all. As long as she can give birth to a child for me, I will definitely treat her well. Although it is impossible to marry her, I will definitely give her no less. Being a legendary mistress, or in other words, being a legendary mother of a child, is basically the best life a non-aristocratic woman can get. But why do I feel so awkward?" Greet complained silently. However, he had no other choice but to follow suit and follow the legend of Langer. The sun god Virako is a demigod. A demigod. He once killed 3 legends of the glorious church in a battle. When you go to him to buy Sun Virgin, you must be polite. "Don't worry," Legend Langer kept walking. "I won't go by myself. I must send someone to go, or ask someone else to go, speaking of which, who is stationed at the Kingdom of the Sun?" "Heinz from the necromantic system." Greet's vision went dark. "Archmage Heinz, I'm sorry for you, it's not a good job to go find someone else's woman for him, whether it's the woman he's already married to, or the woman who nominally belongs to him. You'll be beaten to death if you're not careful. Hey! You can't ask for it in my name. Even if you don't want it, you can't anger others. Rest assured." Legend Langer waved his hand and walked away. The next day, Archmage Heinz, who was far away in the Kingdom of the Sun, received news from this new legend. Please, please. Whether I can have an heir depends on you. As long as you are willing to help me, look, this dragon bone taken from the dragon tomb is yours. If you can help me do it, I will give you an additional legendary equipment. Tailor-made. Archmage Heinz sighed in distress. The key is not the dragon bone, nor the legendary equipment. Although he is very interested in the dragon bone, he can probably find a way to get it by blending it with his friends on Dragon Island. Legendary equipment, when he becomes legendary himself, Black Crow Swamp will definitely distribute it to him. Besides, the necromancer's requirements for legendary equipment are different from other magicians. But Langer is a legend. It's a legend. Even if he is a new legend, he is still a legend. A legend, make a request to him, please ask him, forget it if he can't do it, if you simply refuse to do it, then you will offend people to death. Unless he himself also advances to legend, he will never return to Nevis in this life and stay in the kingdom of the sun. Archmage Heinz looked to his left and then to his right with resentment. On the left-hand side are the three best dark gold skeletons he saved before coming to the kingdom of the sun, a warrior, a spellcaster, and another one made from a priest of the glorious Holy See. Unfortunately, it does not retain the healing ability. On the right-hand side is a mummy that he exchanged with the king of the Sun Kingdom. It is said that he is the heir of a certain generation of kings. He has a trace of divinity in his body, which ensures that the mummy will be immortal for thousands of years, and it also has strong vitality and vitality. Ever since he stepped into the half-step legend, he has been studying this mummy, hoping to understand the mystery between life and death. However, after struggling for so many years, I still can't get in. Do you want him to mummify himself? Archmage Heinz lamented and decided to explore the path first. He prepared a generous gift of gold, jewelry, and herbs used to enhance the warrior's physique, and asked to see the king of the Sun Kingdom. The two parties sat down in the deep and tall palace. Archmage Heinz carefully looked into the depths of the hall, looked at the golden disc hanging on the wall, and lowered his voice. I am mainly asking about the situation. If you feel something is wrong, this matter will end with you. Do not let the priest know, let alone report it to God. How to say? It's like this. There is a legend over there who asked me to ask. I want to pay enough to get a few sun virgins. Before the sound was finished, the golden disc suddenly brightened, and the golden light poured down, covering Archmage Heinz from head to toe. Thanks to @Bingbai Chunkai Scholar Lu for the 1000 starting coin reward. Thanks to @Bookfriend 201911191142511027 for the reward of 200 starting coins. Thanks to @AzureshinU628 for the reward of 100 starting coins.